Hey guys, welcome to another Monday morning update with Stephanie and Rozella, or Rozella and Stephanie, whichever you prefer. They are both with us today again from Spokane, Washington. How's it going, ladies?
Good. How are you?
I can't do it in unison, but I'm good too.
Good.
So, what is our topic of conversation this morning, ladies?
Okay, so we've gotten a lot of inquiries and interest about foreclosures and short sale properties because, as we've mentioned before in previous discussion, the economic hardships that people are facing essentially has unfortunately led some people down that path. If there's a property that comes up that is of interest, can someone actually obtain or gain financing in order to pursue that, or is it a cash only type of a deal?
So someone to purchase the property, get financing is what you're asking, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So, we keep track of data, and there's two things I'll mention prior to answering the question. First of all, is that most people have lots of equity in their home right now. So I don't see many short sales. Are you seeing those requests?
Well, people are leaning towards that, I guess, as like an option to sell. I don't know why. But I would say that I think is just due to lack of information. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's more so people are asking the question, but then it's not really necessarily anything that we're actually actively seeing on the market.
I think people are getting to the point where they're starting to recognize that foreclosure is something that's in their near future. And just because the words foreclosure and short sale kind of go hand in hand, and that's kind of part of informational and needing to know the difference.
All right. Well, for the benefit of our viewing audience, let's define what we're talking about here. So a short sale is a sale of a property when there's not enough proceeds from the sale to pay off the lender in full. So the lender is going to accept less than what they normally would accept, and it's up to the lender. They don't have to do that. So if a borrower, an owner of a property has a property and they want to sell it and there isn't enough equity in that property, then they go to the bank if they have a valid offer and they go, you know what, we have an offer to sell our home, but we don't have enough to pay you off, but the home's only worth what it is. What do you think? And the bank can say yes or no. And there are other legal ramifications. The bank can do the short sale. And now I'm not a legal expert on this, and this is not legal advice. I believe the bank can still get a judgment against them if they choose to do so, but they usually don't, I think, in the short sale situation. I think that's part of the agreement. Having said that, if you're there, talk to an attorney about that because it's a pretty important thing. All right.
Yeah.
So you can purchase a property. If the bank says, yes, we'll accept the lesser funds and it's a short sale, and then you would just buy it in a normal transaction, you would pay off the bank and you would be the proud owner of a new home with your own little mortgage or cash or whatever you did. So that's the short sale stuff. Foreclosure in the state of Washington, once again, this is not legal advice. Talk to someone who really knows what they're talking about here on this. It's very important, okay? It takes approximately 6 months from the date the lender says we're going to start the foreclosure process and send out that first notice to people to say, you're in default, bucko or bucky, whatever your name might be, and we need you to pay this in current, or we're going to move it down the road and take this property, not take it, sell it at a foreclosure auction. About 6 months from the beginning of there. So people have a lot of time to get some kind of plan in place. And as I mentioned, we've had a couple of people that I've talked to in this, but they have so much equity in the property, they just go to a Rozella or a Stephanie and they list the property and sell it and pay back the lender and take the equity and move on. Hurt feelings aside, at least they were able to get out of it, right? But if someone wanted to purchase it during that period of time, then certainly it's like a normal transaction as well from the buyer's perspective. They would just buy the property and pay off the loan and everything would be fine. There becomes a time, I think it is 2 weeks to 11 days prior to the foreclosure sale, when the lender does not have to take the arrears anymore and they can demand the entire loan payment in full if they choose to do so. They could say, oh yeah, bring it current. They could say, yeah, bring it current, and then they can start all over again. But they tend not to do that because, it's been 6 months, nobody's made the payment, and they just kind of want to be done with this, right? You can buy it all the way up to the foreclosure auction sale. The sale can be delayed if the trustee that's involved has control over the sale for the lender. And you can contact them and say, look, we just need a couple more days, and they can extend the sale. They don't like to do that because in doing so, it may start the whole process all over again, and they don't want to mess with that. But I have had them do it more than once, and they'll give us a month extension, and then you have time to close, but they don't have to. So if they don't, then the property gets sold on the courthouse steps. It's an actual auction on the courthouse steps of the county in which the property is located in, and people are there. And yes, you can buy properties right off the courthouse. I like your puppy dog in the bottom left there.
Jade. So
she's obviously interested in this topic, you know. What was that, Rozella?
That period that you're referring to is going to be your pre-foreclosure period. And during that time, that's when if they wanted to sell the home, then they can do so.
All the way up to the day of the sale, they can sell that home. That's exactly right. The sales are normally... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to reiterate, and the type of financing is up to the buyer. It's not going to have to be anything unique. Obviously, if they're doing any like FHA or VA, it would have to still abide by those rules. But just because it's a foreclosure home does not mean that you need a specific type of loan.
Quite correct. Yep. Okay. Any loan that works, that you're qualified for, that closes on time, that being a key thing there, can satisfy that situation for the seller and the buyer. And at the foreclosure sale, then it's a whole different thing. It's been too long since I've been there to know the exact rules on this. Talk to an attorney. It's really important. But you can go to a foreclosure auction at the steps and you can buy a property right there. And I do have lenders available that will fund that transaction. That's not going to be an FHA or regular kind of loan because there's only a certain amount of time, and it might be that day that you have to sow a certain amount of funds, and then you have that a certain amount of time, I think, to close it. But it's very quick. These are not normal loans. These are what's called hard money loans that you take, or all cash if it's all your money, and you go there and you have to have proof that you have the buyer and you can pay what you say you're going to pay for this property, and then you can potentially buy it there. And then of course you do that because you get it at a significant discount. And then something to be very aware of here is once you purchase that property, it extinguishes all other liens that the previous owner may have had on the property, including if it pays off the mortgage less than what the mortgage is due. The lender has their option. They can take the property back for the mortgage if they choose to do so. But if they don't do that and they accept the sale and they get less proceeds than what they're owed, then it's done. It's done from the buyer's perspective. That lender can still go after the previous owner of the mortgage and get more money from them. If there are any subordinate liens, second mortgages, and maybe, well, other than tax liens have priority over everything and need to get paid. But other kinds of liens, like maybe a mechanic's lien, somebody worked on the property and didn't get paid, or a second mortgage, they're extinguished and they're gone. And that's why some people buy them at the foreclosure auction, because it takes care of all the other mess that's there.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Curious. Because right now where we're at, a lot of people are utilizing the equity in their home, like we talked about last week, the ability to refinance and use that equity for other debt. Do you foresee in like the next couple of years, because people are taking that equity out on their homes now, that we're going to start seeing short sales down the timeline because, well, that equity's already been there, their mortgages are already at their value, and so they would have to short sale basically? Or do you think that that won't be the route?
Well, if you're going to do a refinance of your home and tap some equity, it's going to be either with a HELOC, which goes up to 80% of the value with most banks. We'll go up to 90% with ours. You still have equity remaining. Or with a new first mortgage, and you're still going to have equity because we're not going to finance it unless it's, well, VA in particular situations, but USDA or something like that. Unless it's very special financing that will allow for higher loan to value, FHA, the government loans, which will go higher loan to value. A conventional loan is going to still have at least 10% probably and more equity remaining in the home. So it's probably not a short sale situation for people. And then the other thing, Rozella, it's a good question. This is almost not an overstatement. We're going to get your blood type and everything else for you to qualify for a mortgage these days. We really want to know you can make the payment on the mortgage. And hence there hasn't been many foreclosures because foreclosures data is pretty small. because of two things. There's lots of equity in properties, and so they can sell them and not get foreclosed on. But secondly, ever since Dodd-Frank came into existence years ago now, a decade or whatever it is, we really qualify people for loans. We get great tax returns, all the income documentation. We look at their credit, we scrutinize everything. Ask anybody that's been through it, and we make sure that you can qualify for that loan. So unless your situation changes, and that's what happens to people, of course, they lose the job or something like that, then you're going to be able to make payments on a loan from our perspective. So the short answer is I don't really see that happening. I see rates coming down, and I see people tapping more equity because there's a record amount of credit card debt and people are taking care of it in a couple different ways, as we talked about on a previous video. But they're going to probably be getting lower rates in the next 2 years than what we have right now. And more than likely, I don't think the foreclosure activities, it might jump up a little bit, but I'm not exactly sure I can tell you why. I think it's probably going to remain relatively low.
Okay, good. That's a good answer.
Yep.
I like it.
I feel like
Okay.
those answered questions, which was awesome, because again, that's just a question that we get pretty regularly. People, I think, are hopeful for those good deals that can come around from the foreclosures, essentially. But then the
Yeah, I
question
was
is,
actually on a webinar a year ago, where a guy was trying to sell his program for all of the upcoming foreclosures that were going to be coming down the pipeline. I went, I don't think so. There's going to be foreclosures. There always will be, but I don't think there's going to be this big tsunami wave of foreclosure activity that they were predicting, and it really hasn't materialized.
On a community like Spokane size, what would you think would be a healthy number of foreclosures in our area if we were to look it up? I looked it up recently, and I didn't know if that number was high or low.
Okay, what did you find?
There are within Spokane City 230 for pre-foreclosure homes.
Okay, and what is the number of homes in the area that you looked at, Rozella? Better yet, what's the number of mortgages? I'm sorry, Steph. What?
In Spokane City? Oh my gosh, we should know this. To be honest, I don't know how many residents are within Spokane City. Just because we are constantly growing at such a fast rate, it would be a hard number to keep up on.
So we're talking the city proper, that's what you were looking at?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's 300,000? Is that a number?
Oh, more than that.
Okay, so let's say this, and you saw 200 and some, is that what you saw?
Yeah, I was like right around 230.
Okay, so let's say there's 400,000. And let's say that I think this is very conservative. Let's say that half of them have a mortgage. I would expect that more than half have a mortgage on them. So 200,000 properties there have mortgages, and 200 and some properties are in foreclosure. That's 1%. That's just low. And that's kind of where foreclosure data is at, is 1 to 2%.
What percent is where you're kind of starting to go like, oh buddy, this isn't looking good?
Well, back in 2008, it was, I don't know exactly. I would be reaching here, but I bet it was over 5 to 10%. It was maybe not 10, but over 5%. And that's a lot. I mean, that's a huge portion of loans that are bad.
Okay.
And it could have been more than that. There were so many people underwater in 2008 that a lot of people just said, forget it, and walked away from the loan.
Yeah.
I just Googled it, how many houses are in Spokane, and as of July 1st of 2022. So again, we're off by a few numbers because of a few years lagging.
Our zoning changed since then too.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's been crazy growing. 22.
Yeah. So at that point, we had 231,434.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's probably 300 to 350 at least, right? Maybe more.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering my question.
Well, I'm not sure about the accuracy of some of that, but that's my perception is from my experience.
But I think you're on the right track and mindset of guidance, that you don't really foresee a whole influx of foreclosures coming in, especially not short-lived, because again, the equity is where, that's how people get saved from their foreclosures. They just don't necessarily know how to make the move, which is why we like to talk about them, because there are pre-foreclosures. And so, or the people that, life happens or circumstance changes to where they can't make those payments. And so they are definitely, weary of heading into a pre-foreclosure status. So they reach out to us and get information and insight and all the above. So just wanted to double check and make sure that financing, there wasn't anything that had changed, that yes, you can still finance a house that's in pre-foreclosure.
Yep. So just to wrap this up a little bit, it's hard for the owner of the property to get financing when they're in foreclosure status. That is a problem for you. So more than likely, you're going to be reaching out to a Rozella or a Stephanie, and they're going to help you out probably with the sale. That's the quickest, I don't know what quick is, but probably, and easiest way out oftentimes. Getting financing is going to be a problem because of the fact that you haven't made your mortgage payment on the property now.
That sounds like a great topic for another day of how to recover from a foreclosure or bankruptcy options and how to be able to get back in the position to buy a new home then. I think that's a good one for another day.
It's a great topic. I agree with you. All right. Well, thanks for the fun conversation today. I always enjoy it, ladies.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.